One of the best things about the internet is its ability to bring people from all around the world together. It has the ability to connect you to people just like yourself, thousands of miles away, and it allows you to relate to people that you otherwise would never see. If you have a special interest, hobby, or favorite show, but no one in your life seems to care about it, inevitably, there is a thriving online community full of people who share the same interest and are just as eager to talk about it as you. In the early aughts, young men and women created their own online spaces on websites like DeviantArt, LiveJournal, fanfiction.net, and more. Suddenly, they were surrounded by people just like them, who loved the same shows, art, and music. It made them feel wanted and assured that they weren't weird for liking anime or anthropomorphic animals. Where they felt isolated and strange in real life, they found solace in these websites and built a community. The world used to feel like a much larger, more divided place, but with the dawn of the internet and the technological age, the human divide has gotten smaller, to the point where even on this channel, we have people from all around the world in all walks of life present. But, as seen in today's case, this is as much of a good thing as it is a bad thing. Welcome back to another episode of Dreading. Today we are going to be talking about the controversial case of William Melchert-Dinkel. This case often results in large-scale debates and discussions amongst people, with some stating that what happened doesn't technically constitute as a crime, while others feel as though more should have been done to protect people online. Regardless of where you fall in that debate, feel free to leave a comment down below explaining your side. This video was recommended by a number of our subscribers as always, as well as 6 of our patrons. Sadly though, unlike with some of the cases we cover, there was not a lot of information about what occurred online, and what is available tends to focus more on the perpetrator rather than the victim. While I understand the reasoning behind it, my goal is to always treat those who were unwillingly involved with the utmost respect. Although there wasn't a considerable amount of reporting done on what occurred, we've collected all that we can, and I hope to do this case, Nadia and Mark, justice. Before we go any further, I do want to quickly address something that's been happening on my channel the past couple of weeks. A malicious, bad actor has been flagging videos, putting false copyright claims on our content, and trying to get our channel taken down. These claims were false, but the repeated flagging has led to the majority of our content being restricted. Videos are being taken out of search results, and some videos have been taken down entirely while these issues are being processed. YouTube is doing what they can as this person is abusing the system they have in place to protect their users, but currently, this is getting in the way of some content production. With that in mind, we want to thank you guys for the support dealing with these issues as they come about, and also getting this channel to 500,000 subscribers. When I started this channel a little over a year ago, I could have never imagined the support, and I hope I continue to live up to your expectations. I also need to thank my patrons, as they have allowed me to pursue this full time, regardless of the issues happening on YouTube. The safety net they have provided ensures that even if this bad actor gets the channel deleted or all of our videos permanently demonetized, we will still be able to make respectful content, which is what we want to do. If you like this content, hit the like button, as it does help us stay in the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe. If you have any cases you would like to see us look into, leave them in the comments down below, or email us at dreading.official@gmail.com. We are currently working through over 1,000 suggestions, and if I haven't gotten to yours, be aware that I am just one person working with my brother. I also want to clarify that I only report on crimes, and I am not a private investigator. If you reach out to me reporting a crime and wanting me to expose the other party, I can only tell you to report it to law enforcement. With all of that said, let us begin. Nadia Kajuji was born December 19, 1991, in Brampton, Ontario. She was the youngest of 4 siblings and grew up in a loving, supportive, and incredibly protective family. Nadia was a talented artist and had a passion for music. She was studying psychology at Carleton University in Ottawa when she began to experience depression and anxiety. According to friends and family, Nadia was a bright girl who strived for near perfection. She was the kind of person who saw anything less than an A as a failure and viewed life as a series of tests. In her first year at university, away from friends and family, she would branch out, try new things, and push herself further into the world than she had ever been allowed before. After starting her freshman year, her relationship with her high school boyfriend would come to a swift and sudden end. Both parties seemed to agree that their relationship had run its course, but the ending did hurt, as Nadia felt like that had been her first real relationship. Shortly thereafter, Nadia began another relationship. She was said to be infatuated with this person and believed that he was the love of her life. Friends would go on to state that Nadia was incredibly invested in the relationship and would often gush to them about how perfect of a guy he was. And at first, the relationship seemed to be going well. However, it would come to an abrupt end. She would never go into detail about exactly what had happened to cause the breakup, but it was clear that it affected her more than it did him. She was deeply hurt and began to write music and poetry about unrequited love, having it all then losing it and expressing deep sorrow. Friends and family would notice a shift in Nadia's personality. Where she had been bright and bubbly, she no longer wanted to go out. She would stay in all day, writing on message boards and writing morose poetry, and refused to go to class. But Nadia wasn't just dealing with a tremendous heartbreak. She was going through one of the most physically painful things she'd ever been through, a miscarriage. During the short relationship with her ex, Nadia became pregnant. She had taken measures to try and prevent the pregnancy and thought she had been safe. But after the pair broke up, she realized that she had missed her period. In her video diaries, she stated she didn't know whether she was happy or scared for this development. She deeply loved the father of her child, but didn't feel as if she was ready to become a mom. But before Nadia could decide what she wanted to do with her life, if she wanted to keep the baby, give it up for adoption, or become a mother, the chance was taken away from her, and she miscarried. In her video diaries, she described this time as being incredibly debilitating and depressing. She felt powerless, like every choice she had was taken away from her, and she was just left adrift. While her body would recover from the miscarriage, her mind dealt with the after effects poorly, and she was sunk into a deep, seemingly unending depression. The cocktail of hormones that the miscarriage ravaged on her body, and she wrote repeatedly that she would never be the same. She could no longer go out or go to classes. The idea of taking care of herself seemed completely foreign to her, but she still tried. She was talking to a mental health counselor on campus, taking antidepressants, and would leave little love notes for herself around her dorm room, with the hope that seeing positive affirmations would fix her mind. Nadia told her parents she was just tired, and that she would be back to herself in no time, although she had no idea if she was still that bright, bubbly person. And so she did what most people do when they need help and a sense of community, but are stuck inside. She went online. Mark Drybrough was said to have been a mischievous young kid, growing up in England. He loved computers, video games, and wreaking havoc, and those who knew him knew he was destined to do something wonderful. But like Nadia, once Mark left high school, things hadn't gone according to plan. While in college, his girlfriend would come down with a viral infection, and eventually, he too would fall ill. They both would experience incredible bouts of fatigue, being unable to stay awake for long periods of time, and often confusing reality for dreams. The girlfriend would be formally diagnosed with the ailment, and eventually would recover, but Mark would not. He couldn't get out of bed even to take care of himself, and soon he was wasting away. His girlfriend tried to take care of him, to get him motivated to seek treatment, but after months of no improvement, she left him. Eventually, he dropped out of college and moved into a small home owned by a relative. Friends and family would describe Mark as being a shell of himself during this time. He couldn't so much as crack a smile sincerely, and it felt as if part of him was broken beyond repair. His parents would insist he get help, and when on antidepressants, they would see Mark come back to life. But that only happened in short bursts, as he would often go off of his medication, not liking how it made him feel. This would cause psychotic rifts and more bouts of depression, and for Mark, the cycle seemed never-ending. He had no money, no car, and no social life. He couldn't hold down a job, and his parents were paying the bills. Mark felt as if there was no way up, and that he was drowning within himself, and that changing his life was impossible. The amount of labor required to dig himself out of the trench would kill him, and he, like Nadia, turned to the internet. When you think of an online catfish, you think of someone like William Melchert-Dinkel, an older, overweight man parading online under an assumed identity, usually that of a young, attractive girl. There's a plethora of reasons that catfishers have given as to why they do it. They want attention, they want money, they want to catch their partner cheating, or they simply want revenge. Catfishing is usually regarded as a mostly harmless practice, where the person of the opposite end feels duped and annoyed. Maybe they lost money, maybe they sent compromising photos, but they weren't really forced into doing anything. But William wasn't like most, where they manipulate an unsuspecting person into a false sense of security with no intention of hurting them. In fact, hurting them was his main goal. William Melchert-Dinkel was born June 21st, 1962, in St. Paul, Minnesota. William grew up in a religious family and attended the University of Minnesota, where he earned a degree in nursing. Unlike other cases I have covered, people who interacted with William have chosen not to speak about the nurse, citing their unwillingness to be associated with him in any capacity. Because of that, not much is known about his early life. After completing his education, William worked as a licensed practical nurse in various hospitals and nursing homes in Minnesota, but was either incompetent or murderous, depending on various reports. According to the Minnesota Nursing Board, he gave the improper prescription to a resident in 1994 while working at a Minnesota nursing facility. This screw-up nearly caused the resident's death, and other members of staff suspected it wasn't an accident. In another case, he forgot to document a resident's deteriorating condition, and the patient died on the way to the hospital. He was sent to an ortho-neuro unit at a St. Paul hospital the next year, and he continued to make egregious, life-ending errors. His supervisor stated that, quote, he continually demonstrated difficulty retaining information. When chastised, he stated, I have problems at home too. It simply overflows into everything. He would later be fired from a nursing home, citing the alleged abuse of 2 residents. At his next job, coworkers would describe him as angry and rude to the elderly patrons, yelling at them if they asked for assistance. In one instance, a resident asked him for help going to the bathroom, and he screamed in her face. On another occasion, William was asked to wrap the foot of a resident whose toes had been amputated. He had got done wrapping the foot and came out and said, she's ready to go. After entering the room, the coworker scratched her head and requested that an aide take a look. The aide looked and said, oh my God, he's wrapped the good foot. He was a married father of 2, but more importantly, he spent his free time on online forums, trying to convince people to commit suicide for his own sexual fetish, often using his children's pictures in his ruse. It's unknown just how many people William prodded into committing suicide for his sexual fulfillment, but it is confirmed that he did this at least 4 separate times. Though suicide chat rooms are considered unethical by some, they actually have a profoundly positive effect. In various studies, suicide chat rooms have been shown to save lives, rather than end them. They offer a person dealing with suicidal ideation the chance of finding support without judgment, redemption, and relief. Most people who log on to these chat rooms feel as if their lives are over, and that no one can understand the grief and turmoil they're going through. But in these private online conversations, they find the opposite is true. The companionship that is found on these sites encourages the person to move forward, to keep trying. But that was not what William was using them for. In July of 2005, Mark Drybrow was in another serious battle with his depression. He felt as if he was a burden to his family, and that nothing he did would make up for the despair he had put them through. Under the username Spooky, he posted a request on the website alt.suicide.methods. Does anyone have details on hanging methods where there isn't access to anything high up to tie the rope to? I've read that people have taken their own lives in jail. Anybody know of inventive methods, the ones you don't get to read in the paper? Almost immediately, he was messaged by another user, going by the name Lee Dow. Lee was a 20-something nurse from Minnesota who kept a relatively low profile on the forums. Most of her comments would be telling the recipient to check their email, as she didn't want to give too much about herself away. In early comments on the site, Lee would state that despite her job as a nurse, she lived at home with her parents due to her ongoing struggles with bipolar disorder. She claimed she had been struggling with depression for over a decade, and despite her best efforts in going to the top doctors in the area, nothing worked. She claimed that she had done everything: drugs, therapy, experimental treatments, and prayers, but nothing helped. She stated that she was tired of pretending to be happy and having to mask how exhausting her life really was. She wanted to rest and never open her eyes again. She seemed partial to hanging, and whenever she could, insisted that if someone was going to commit suicide, they would be better off hanging themselves. She emailed Mark, responding to his initial comment, saying, depending upon how tall you are, preferably under 6 feet tall, you can easily hang from a door using the knob, or the other side, to tie the rope to, and sling it over the top of the door, attach the noose or loop to yourself, then step off and hang successfully. Within weeks, he would be dead, using the exact method Lee had told him about. She would go on to do the same with a 17-year-old girl from Central America. This girl had been sexually abused early on in her life, and was considering suicide when she found the forums. She had posted numerous times, and through her posts, got into contact with Lee. However, she also came into contact with Celia Blay, a 65-year-old grandmother who found the site on accident. Celia, unlike Lee, saw the site as a chance to help people see the value in themselves and their lives, and sought to improve the lives of people on it. She regularly posted supportive messages telling people young and old that they deserved to live, and that she was proud of them for all they had already accomplished. The 17-year-old talked to Celia often, and within the span of a few weeks, she seemed to be doing better. She was looking forward to future events, and felt understood for the first time in a long time. However, there was one issue. She told Celia that she had made a suicide pact with Lee, and that she felt obligated to carry the pact out. The two women had made plans to kill themselves together via webcam, using Lee's favorite method, hanging, and Lee was beginning to get impatient with her. The 17-year-old felt like every day she was alive, she was letting someone down. The pressure was making her nervous. Celia informed the young girl that she didn't have to do anything that she didn't want to. Her life was more important than a promise she made to someone online, and more importantly, if she didn't want to kill herself, she shouldn't. Celia didn't trust Lee, and though the 17-year-old girl had moved on with her life, no longer using the site regularly, Celia kept her eye on the young nurse's account. In July of 2006, Lee replied to another user, Half Jacket, in their post, which read, "Think I'm going to be left with no other option but to hang myself. I'm a big guy, 420 pounds, so making sure the rope doesn't break is vital to me, so I've been looking at climbing rope. Can anyone shed any technical info on this to make sure I get the right stuff?" She told them to check their email. This account belonged to Nikola Trifunovic, a 22-year-old researcher in Zagreb, and like she had before, Lee made a suicide pact with the young man, saying that they should kill themselves at the same time over webcam. That way, they wouldn't be dying alone. Lee gave Nikola instructions on how to practice his suicide, coaching him on what to do. Luckily, Nikola backed out of the deal. However, Lee would go dark on the website. Many assumed she had killed herself, with multiple members of the forums posting that they had also made suicide pacts going with her, and Nikola was contacted by someone who claimed to be Lee's mother. She stated that Lee had killed herself, and that she was happy her daughter's pain was over. Lee's popularity on the site, added with the fact that she had clearly planned to kill herself 10 times over with various people, left a bad taste in Nikola's mouth. But he assumed she was dead, only for her to reappear 2 months later. One of the users who had a suicide pact with her posted to the site, stating that Lee had emailed him, once again trying to convince him to kill himself. She seemed unaware of her own death. In order to verify her identity, this user tried to get Lee to call him, but she claimed she couldn't. First, she said her phone didn't have a camera, and then later amended the claim to be that her phone couldn't do long-distance calls. Immediately, the forum turned against her, believing that she was a pervert who got off on convincing people to die for them on webcam, and with some of the members being under the age of 18, the implications only grew more foul. With that, Lee seemed to vanish from the site, reputation entirely destroyed. However, a few short days later, she was replaced by Falcon Girl, then Cami D. All of these people were actually William Melchert-Dinkel. Again, it's unknown how many people were actually convinced to commit suicide by William, but estimates put it in the hundreds. Many forum users would stop posting after being told by William to check their inboxes, and despite Celia Blae's best efforts, police found that there was nothing they could do. She approached numerous law enforcement agencies, showing evidence of how this person was pressuring people, some as young as 13, to kill themselves live on webcam for them, and how she believed there was a sexual element, but they repeatedly informed her that it was out of their hands. However, as she worked to try and stop Dinkel from pressuring more men and women into early graves, William, under the name Cami, came into contact with Nadia. Nadia informed Cami of her recent struggles, how she felt like a broken, unfixable person, and Cami convinced her to enter a suicide pact. William tried to convince Nadia to hang herself, stating that it would be better if they did it together. That way, they wouldn't be alone in their final moments, but Nadia rebuffed the offer. She stated that she wanted to jump off of a local bridge. That way, at the very least, it could look like an accident. She didn't want the people she loved the most to think that they had done anything wrong, or that she could have been saved if they did something different. Shortly after their conversations, Nadia would go missing, sparking a large-scale investigation that would lead directly to William. Nadia would disappear from her dorm room on March 9, 2008. Her roommate had expressed concern to the campus police and to other authority figures at the school multiple times, telling them that Nadia was openly stating that she wanted to end her life, that she couldn't sleep, and she was a danger to herself. But the school and authorities failed to tell her family or get more help. Nadia's friends and family searched tirelessly for her, and with virtually no leads to go off of, the police quickly searched her electronics and found a treasure trove on her laptop. Directly before she left her dorm and walked out into the snowy abyss, Nadia had been conversing with Cami and discussing the various ways she planned to kill herself. The police were shocked with how supportive Cami was, giving Nadia tips and tricks to make sure she actually died on her first try. She told the depressed college student that she shouldn't throw herself off of a bridge, as that didn't have a large success rate, and felt that she would be better off just doing it in her dorm over webcam. Nadia's body wouldn't be found for a number of weeks, partially because she had thrown herself into a frozen body of water. But the cops couldn't sit idly by, so they focused their attention on trying to find who Cami was, and quickly found William. Shortly after Nadia's body was found, the police would finally catch up with William at his home. The officers informed him that they were there to discuss some of his online activities, at which point he said, "I think I know what you mean." He went on to say that he and his wife had, at times, given inappropriate advice to people online because it was their obligation as healthcare providers, and admitted to being Lee, Falcon Girl, Cami, and a plethora of other aliases. However, he claimed he never actually watched anyone commit suicide via webcam, despite repeatedly insisting to. He also claimed that he didn't have any sexual gratification from the act, but it was, quote, thrilling to behold. Following the interview, Dinkel would attempt to seek treatment, walking into a Faribault emergency room and stating that he was dealing with an addiction to suicide internet sites. Despite his insistence that what he did was not sexual, he claimed that he had a suicide-specific fetish multiple times over, as noted in the medical documents. The details of the case were disturbing, with many people disgusted at William's actions. However, legal experts said prosecuting such a case because Mr. Melchert-Dinkel did not physically help kill anyone. In an interview with the Associated Press a year after Nadia's suicide, Williams stated about the case that, "Nothing is going to come of it. I've moved on with my life, and that's it." He also claimed that his daughters knew about what he had done prior to Nadia's death, and that he had stopped right after her suicide because they had told him what he was doing wasn't right. He told various outlets that by the time Nadia decided to kill herself, he had already decided to stop, so technically there was nothing more to do. Many felt like William encouraging young men and women to die, giving them advice, and making suicide pacts wasn't morally right, but it also wasn't legally wrong, and William felt confident that he would never be charged. But in 2011, 3 years after Nadia's death, he was charged with advising, encouraging, and assisting Nadia and Drybro in taking their own lives using internet correspondence. He was found guilty of aiding a suicide under Minnesota law, which provides penalties for anyone who intentionally advises, encourages, and assists in taking the other's own life. He was sentenced on May 4th, 2011, to 360 days in jail. But on March 19, 2014, the Supreme Court reversed the conviction, citing that Williams' actions were protected speech under the First Amendment. He would later be retried and found guilty of assisting the suicide of Mark Drybro and attempting to assist the suicide of Nadia Kachuchi, and served 178 days in jail before being released. With all of that said, let me know what you think down below. Do you think William committed a crime, or do you believe that he did nothing wrong? Hopefully, YouTube doesn't shut down this comment section, as they've done in the past, because I would love to see your responses. If there's a video you would like to see made, or a suggestion you have for this channel, feel free to email me at treading.official@gmail.com. Have a great day, and remember, stay safe.